So I'm sure we have all heard the saying, the third time's the charm, or three's a charm. Seems to always go in threes, but sometimes that always has kind of a negative tone to it because, well, what about the first two? And not always is the first two such a bad thing, rather, maybe a learning experience. And the point I am getting at here is you may have known us as Coast to Coast Sports. You may have known us as Total Sports Talk. And yes, those shows have been great and it has been such a great experience and it has been a learning experience as who we are as a show. But sometimes you have to center on things, you have to tweak things out for perfection. Shoot, one of the greatest basketball players of all times, LeBron James, didn't win his first finals until his third try. Sometimes in life that happens. But right now, I want to introduce a new show, a new name, and that is going to define us. And that is none other than the Snap Count Show, where we are all things NFL football. It has been such a wonderful ride with you guys, and now we are here for a new journey that I hope that you guys can join us in. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me, as always, are none other than David Street,
What's up, everybody?
Ed Smith,
Hook 'em, y'all.
and lastly, Thaddeus Lloyd.
Hello.
Gentlemen, it is great to be back. It feels good. Just even talking about it gives me chills because there are many things I love in life, but one of the things at the top is sports. And NFL football is all of our passion. And I think that we are going to have a good time on this show and for all the future shows and episodes that we have. And guys, there's been a lot that has transpired since our last show. There's been a lot that has transpired in the NFL since the Super Bowl, since the Eagles beat the Chiefs and denied them of a three-peat. And I don't want to kind of harper on really the past as much, what has happened, but more so of what is being focused on now. The NFL season is about to start, and it wouldn't be an off season without none other than the Dallas Cowboys. They seem to always be in the spotlight, whether they are the most highest franchise out there. They are always in the spotlight. They have a brand. They have the most obnoxious fans, but there seems to always be drama that kind of circles around them. And well, that drama right now is their star player, Micah Parsons, has requested a trade. He is not happy anymore in Dallas. It has been a clown show. I'll put that in the nicest terms as I could say. It has been such a clown show in Dallas. And Jerry Jones always seems to be at the center of attention, whether it's good or it's bad, mainly been bad lately. And guys, we really need to kind of jump right into this. Ed, I actually want to start with you, you being a Texas native. You get some of the biggest scoops early because you are there. Micah Parsons, why is this ugly and why is it going to get uglier before it gets better?
Well, Micah Parsons has really tried to make this as easy as possible for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys to get him signed long term off of his rookie contract. And at every turn, Jerry Jones, being the GM that he is, keeps kicking the can down the line. And it has been continuous. Micah's agent went to the Cowboys after year 3, after year 4, and now that we're at year 5, when Micah went to Jerry and asked what the direction of the Cowboys is, Jerry decided to try and create a pseudo contract negotiation with him without Micah's agent being there. That is against every players association rule that's out there. They need their representation to be there for that. And to continuously keep kicking the can down the line, Jerry Jones is painting himself into a corner. Now, to Jerry's credit, in all the business aspects that he has in his life, all the oil deals, all everything that is outside of the Cowboys, it is a negotiating tactic to wait until the last minute and try and sign who you're trying to get for as little money as possible because they have no choice but to sign with you. And that really feels like what Jerry Jones is doing in this case. And what he continues to try and do, saying that he's all in or he's really going after it. Well, he doesn't do it up front where it could cost less because they could have signed Micah Parsons long term 2 years ago and probably paid $8 to $10 million less per year than what he's going to demand in the open trade market. So by Jerry Jones doing this and employing those negotiating tactics that are for other businesses, not the NFL, he is just painting himself into the spotlight of he is just a terrible general manager, especially in this instance specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, what I want to kind of toss over to you really quick is maybe talking about the parallels of maybe the Miles Garrett situation and Micah Parsons. Are there more similarities than not, or is this going to be an anomaly?
Well, I think when you look at the Miles Garrett situation, I think looking back in hindsight, it was obvious that that whole thing was a negotiating tactic to make Miles Garrett the highest defensive player in the NFL, right? And it's also true that a lot of these written statements aren't necessarily written by the players themselves. They're more so written by their PR manager, or at the very least, heavily influenced by their PR manager. You read that statement from Micah Parsons, and you could tell just how personal it was. That didn't read like a negotiating tactic. That didn't read like some PR friendly thing. That read like a man who had given his all to the big D and tried over and over and over again to get something done and just couldn't get it done. And now he's fed up, and I don't blame him. And given that he is one of the best defensive players in the NFL, certainly top five. You could argue top three. He's just entering his prime, and I don't blame him one bit for wanting to get out of there because you have to think from his mindset. I'm one of the best defensive players in the NFL. I know that I am, and I'm being treated like garbage, and I'm not going to allow myself to go through that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And David, I'm going to get back to you actually in a second because I have another question for you. But Thaddeus, what I also want to kind of talk about is kind of the precedent that's being set because there are now other teams that are signing their defensive stars to massive contracts. I mean, in the offseason alone, we have gone from Max Crosby getting a massive extension to Miles Garrett, TJ Watt. Well, now Micah Parsons wants that. So, what does this say now with the defense? Because you're seeing these stars getting paid quarterback money. So, how is this going to stay on course to not only pay your quarterback, but pay a defensive star a quarterback's ransom?
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult balance because you do have these past probably 5 years, I'd say so, and they're just that price just keeps on going up for these elite defensive players. They are the best at their position, but are they making as much of a difference as a quarterback on the defensive side of the ball? Maybe, but you could make the argument for it potentially, but they're not exactly the quarterback of their defense. The If you looked at it, from a like a strategic wise, the actual quarterback of your defense is your linebacker, but your most probably impactful player could be your defensive lineman. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to be paying like these massive amounts of money. Who, while these players are really good, they're in the trenches. They're getting muddled up with all these other, massive 300-pound dudes. So it is a bit trickier to just say up front, oh, he's a one of the great best defensive players in the league. Let's pay him our QB money. That's a little bit too much because while we do like to say this league is offensive centered, We're paying our quarterbacks a lot. We're also been paying our defensive players too a lot as well. But we have to distribute it more, and you can find more super elite talent on the defensive side of things than you can on the offensive side. It seems like. So, yeah, it's just walking this fine line, and unfortunately, like Ed has said, like the Cowboys have delayed this way too much, and it's not helped them out at all, as far as like the rest of the market goes for Micah, because we got other teams who would definitely want him. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen with him.
Every team in the NFL should want him. I mean, he has a proven track record dating back to Penn State. He is an incredible talent, and there are many incredible talents in the NFL, and I think that he has shown his worth. He is worth every penny, but that kind of brings back to what I was just talking about. I mean, a going rate for a quarterback, a star quarterback, is around 50 million average a year, and now these defensive ends, these edge rushers, are now at about 44, 45 million a year. That's 95 million in two players. It, you have a cap salary you have to deal with. And Ed, or sorry, David, I'm going to start with you, and Ed, I'm going to have you rebuttal. But now in the Cowboys situation, and this is actually all in the NFL, but this gives you a chance, David, if you want to talk about Jerry Jones some more, is are these owners, are these GMs eating up these rookie contracts? Because that's when you take advantage of things. But in life, we do our best to get a raise. This isn't just NFL players. This is day-to-day life. We put in the work to get recognized, to hopefully get a raise, to make more money. Well, as a player like Micah Parsons in his rookie contract, he worked his tail off and he showed every bit of his worth, but they love to take advantage of that rookie contract until the very end. And now it is to the very end and they are kind of screwed. So for Jerry Jones, do you kind of defend him for taking advantage of that rookie contract, or do you think that maybe he should have bit the bullet and already taken advantage and done something with Micah Parsons' contract?
Well, I think he should have already done something with it, but also, in a very slight defense of Jerry Jones, I'm not even sure this is a whole rookie thing. I mean, doesn't Jerry Jones do this with pretty much all of his star players, regardless of whether they're rookies, second years, third, like what, regardless of whatever year the player is in. This is something that Jerry Jones, I'm pretty sure, is known for doing with all of his players. So I don't know if this is necessarily a oh well you're a rookie, so I'm not going to give you what you want yet. But yeah, all that being said, Jerry Jones obviously should have done something right from the get go. And also credit to Micah Parsons too, reading that note and just seeing the amount of patience uh, that he exercised throughout this entire process. Just still going out there and performing for the fans, despite obviously being frustrated that nothing was being done on the negotiating table.
Yeah, and these rookie contracts, they do help with your cap, but you have to show in good faith that you are going to make something happen. And unfortunately, nothing has been shown to Micah Parsons in good faith that they were going to sign him long term. So Ed, I know we're going to kind of hunker down a little bit on this, but I think it's safe to say this was not a smart tactic on Jerry's end, although as an owner, taking advantage of the rookie contract is kind of smart.
Right. And nobody's ever claimed that Jerry Jones isn't a smart businessman. Nobody can ever possibly say that. He bought the Cowboys for $10 million in 1989, and it's worth 250 bagillion gazillion dollars. And he's the reason why. There is a certain prestige to playing for the Dallas Cowboys because of how valuable that franchise is. And it's because of what Jerry Jones has been able to do to market that franchise and create the value of playing in Dallas. Now, that being said, he for the last 30 years has believed that he is a better GM than 31 other GMs in this league that came up through the ranks of the executive side of the NFL and has done their due diligence to become one of the 31 other uh, GMs working right now. Well, over that time period, yes, he's had a moderate amount of success by having a few playoff appearances. But when it comes to actually being the guy that can put it all together, Jerry Jones has never been the guy. And that infuriates his ego more than anything else because everybody still believes that Jimmy Johnson was the reason why the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls, not the 2 plus 1 that Jerry won without him. So that was Jimmy Johnson's team, not Jerry Jones's team. And when you have this track record of 30 years of not being able to get back to the pinnacle, which is what you say your standard is, at some point you've got to look inward. And that inward look is not something Jerry's very good at because of his ego. And because of that ego, he thinks he can manipulate things like rookie contracts and bring in older vets. But let's be honest, how many top flight talented players have come to Dallas, loved playing in Dallas for that fan base, but hated it enough to leave on bad terms. I'm thinking where that's the first one that comes to mind that he was anxious to get out of Dallas because he was not being valued on the contract side the way that he was valued as a teammate.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree there. And Dallas is such a big market team that for someone more than willing to leave, it kind of tells you that, well, that market is the problem, not the player.
So I've got a question because I actually genuinely don't know this, right? Um, so Micah Parsons straight up said, "I no longer want to play for the Dallas Cowboys." Now, when a player says, "I want to be traded," everybody knows that's just player speak for "give me more money." You compare it to the Myles Garrett situation, Matthew. Did Myles Garrett ever once explicitly say, "I no longer want to play for the Cleveland Browns," or did he just say, "I want to be traded"?
I want to say that he did because even before he requested a trade, I was seeing a lot of kind of murmuring of him wanting out of Cleveland. Maybe this was his way of reverse psychology. He had a plan of kind of setting that trap, which Cleveland, of course, fell for. But when this situation was happening, Myles Garrett, I was saying over and over again that I felt like all ties were severed. Boy, was I wrong because he ended up resigning. This situation, though, and this was going to be the next question I was going to ask you guys is Micah Parsons done in Dallas? And my answer right now is yes. I do think that all ties are severed. I think that there is a endless supply of a sour taste in his mouth with this front office with Jerry Jones. Um, that doesn't mean Dallas is going to trade him. I just don't think that Micah Parsons wants to play in Dallas anymore. So I don't know if that answers your question, David, but uh, Ed.
Uh, I actually wanted to get the perspective of Thaddeus here because when we're talking about rookie contracts, he's actually seen the reverse of this from San Francisco, where you spend so much money on defense that you kind of have to take advantage of rookie contracts on the offensive side and not spend as much money there. You That's the way this salary cap goes. Thaddeus, can you speak more on basically taking advantage of rookie contracts to really bolster the other side of the ball of what you feel is more important?
Yeah, definitely. So it's what happened, what San Francisco basically tried to do the past 7 years. Now they got it was kind of crazy how it happened, but the first couple years we had Jimmy Garoppolo, and now they gave him a big contract. They gave him like a semi-big contract when they signed him, and then they gave him a big extension afterwards. But then he falls off. They get rid of him. They draft Trey Lance. He doesn't work out. Brock Purdy comes in. He works out, and they try to basically sign as many big defensive free agents as they could, like Travarius Ward, right off the cheaps, massive contract. Javon Hargrave 2 years ago comes off the comes off the Eagles Super Bowl loss, massive contract. But then you have the downside of it, which is when these players do not pan out. Like Javon Hargrave hardly panned out for the 49ers at all. Last year, he played in 4 games, despite signing like an $80 million extension or something crazy like that. So it was, now they were trying to take advantage of it, with having Brock Purdy on his rookie contract, and it was still insanely cheap because not only was he a rookie, but he was a 7th round rookie, so he was hardly getting paid anything. So like, oh yeah, we'll bolster the defense, and it worked for the first full season of Brock Purdy. So 2 years ago, while Christian McCaffrey was on like his tear, like they could pay Christian McCaffrey, they could pay Trent Williams, and they brought in all these defensive guys. But then the second year came around, everyone got injured. And then the people who got the big bucks couldn't, they didn't play or play up to expectations, because it's very hard for most of the time you see someone get paid a lot of money. It's very rare that they actually live up to that contract. It's usually players who are like in the organization for a long time, or rookies who are who have immediate impact. Those are pretty much the best players. So it's very hard to make these huge contracts while trying to maintain balance on a different side of the ball. If you're like focusing on one side like the 49ers did, it did not pan out. They're technically in kind of a rebuilding year ish, yes and no. um but it just goes to show you can never know what's going to happen after someone signs a contract.
Yeah. It's a game of risk, and I think it's safe to say that in almost every sport. We've seen many players get signed to a big contract, Barry Zito in baseball, and that did not pan out well for the Giants. But Micah Parsons, I think it's safe to say that yes, he is worth every penny, and I think that bearing any injury if he were to ever sustain, I think that he'd play out his contract. I'd say pretty decent, just because he's got that talent in him. Ed, do you want to make any more final comments about this situation before the next topic?
I think the main thing I'm kind of getting out of Thaddeus on that is Jerry obviously believes that his offense is more important than his defense. He believes that if he gets enough guys on offense, they can win ball games through outscoring everybody, but pay only one or two defensive guys. Because if you look at the turnover in the defensive roster for the Cowboys over the past 15, 20 years, it has been all first, second, third year guys that are just kind of wayward in and out of the organization. So what Thaddeus is saying about signing all these big name defensive guys in San Francisco with a couple of offensive guys getting big contracts, the reverse is true in Dallas. And Jerry thinks that that is what's going to get him over the top. It's just not panned out that way. And right now, Micah Parsons is in the middle of just feeling the brunt of being used when everybody else in the league would be more than happy to welcome him in with open arms and open checkbooks.
Well, what's funny, Ed. You talk about Jerry Jones always being an offense over defense guy, and who just won the Super Bowl in large part because they had the best defense in the league. Oh, it was only the Cowboys' arch rival, the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm starting to think Jerry Jones also runs the Cincinnati Bengals. All offense, no defense. But
We'll have plenty of time to talk about the Eagles.
yeah, we will. um, so yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to find out here, I feel like soon enough, what's going to happen with Micah Parsons and his future, if it remains in Dallas or if it is elsewhere. And we have our own opinions on kind of where we think that's going to be, but we don't know until it actually happens. But it is not a fun situation at all, and it could get worse. Like I said before, it gets better. For those of you who are football fans, you know the name Mike Mayock. Okay, he is very similar to like a Mel Kiper, guy who likes to give a lot of opinions, and you may agree with him, you may not agree with him. Yeah, if you are not a football fan, maybe you know Stephen A. Smith. Sometimes those opinions are really far fetched. Okay, well, Mike Mayock released a quarterback tier, okay, where he's got at the top of the tier list. We're going to start with the tier names, and I'll go with the quarterbacks from here. The highest on the tier list is franchise quarterbacks. Right under them are quarterbacks that can win a Super Bowl. And then you have solid but ... question marks. Young guys to the side, and followed by the jury's out. Okay? So that is the tier top to bottom. What I want to kind of talk about here are the two highest tiers and go from there. So I'm just going to name the players on these two top tiers, starting with franchise quarterbacks. You have none other than Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Okay? And we'll get each other's opinions here shortly. On the second tier, can win a quarterback with them. You've got Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, and CJ Stroud. I know what you're thinking probably right off the rip. All right, there's got to be more, or you're missing a quarterback possibly. And that's kind of exactly really what I want to talk about here. Before we talk about what we agree with, Ed, I got to go straight to you because I know that this will be brought up. Whose name's missing on, let's say, can win a Super Bowl with?
Well, as a Packers fan, obviously I'm missing one name in particular, and that's Jordan Love. When you look at the full list, you will see Jordan Love is the first name on just outside of this second tier. And I understand why. I just don't agree with it. A little bit of Homer in me. I'm not gonna lie. Because he, you when he's your guy, you kind of swaddle him and you want him to go, go be fruitful. That type of thing. But overall, Jordan Love in the second half of the last two regular seasons has been the best quarterback in the NFL by statistical standards. So I don't understand how he could not have Jordan Love in the can win a Super Bowl with. Yes, he's younger, but he's got the experience of from being on the bench and learning how to play. And now with the last 2 years under Matt LaFleur's offense, everything is clicking right now. They just added a major piece in the draft with Matthew Golden in the first round draft. There's so much to like about Jordan Love. I don't understand why he's not in this top two tier list. That being said, if I were to try and replace somebody out of that top two tier, at this point, I got to go Justin Herbert. He hasn't really shown me much more than just being able to throw it 50,000 yards in the air. That's not playing quarterback in this league.
Well, and how much do you think, Ed, that his name is only there as in Justin Herbert because of who his coach is? Because this is a quarterback list, not a quarterback and coach list. And that was going to be my next point was, as much as you guys know, I'm an Oregon Duck through and through, Herbert should not be there. And he has not shown anything to me why he should be there. So is that because Jim Harbaugh is the head coach of the Chargers?
I think it's because everybody can see the talent, but he has not realized the talent.
Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. David, before we talk about maybe hot takes here, what else kind of stands out to you on maybe these top two lists?
Well, before I get there, I just want to say, Ed, you missed a golden opportunity to have the perfect pun. I definitely don't love this list.
Oh my goodness.
He was getting there eventually.
Well, as far as just what kind of stands out, uh, I do have a few things, but I don't want to reveal them just yet until we, get to our hot takes. If you don't mind, I kind of want to save them for then.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. How about this? Do you agree having a second year player defending offensive rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels, on this list already?
Oh, I in the can win a Super Bowl list.
Yes.
No, I would move him down to solid.
As in, it's too early. I mean, we've all seen a sophomore slump. I mean, it
So
happens.
so the reason, and I guess we're kind of getting into it now. So there's definitely two players in the can win a Super Bowl list that I would move down, and that is Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud. As far as Jaden Daniels goes, okay, I've always said that 1 year isn't enough. You have to prove it to me. You have to show consistency. And yes, we've seen plenty of sophomore slumps. And speaking of sophomore slumps, that's why I would put CJ Stroud down to solid. Why? Because after CJ Stroud had an amazing rookie year, he got worse in pretty much every major category. You're telling me that he belongs in the can win a Super Bowl with list? Like, are you kidding me? Yeah, I know the Texans won the division for the second straight year, but the AFC South was inarguably the worst division in the NFL. So again, great rookie year, got worse in almost every major category, and so that's why I put him down to the solid list.
Okay, okay. Thaddeus, let's talk about the top tier, the franchise quarterback tier. Are you in agreement with all four quarterbacks that are there?
Yeah, I think so. Everyone, I'm pretty sure there's hardly been anyone out there who's disagreed with the top four, and I'm not going to be an exception. Like these four guys clearly just carry their offenses no matter the situation or what happens. And it's just because all, at least two of the guys are athletic freaks. One of them is just well, yeah, you could call Patrick Mahomes an athletic freak. Can just throw the ball at any angle. And then
Yeah.
you have Joe Burrow, who's basically the Dan Marino of our era. I just thought of that yesterday. I was like, he went to one Super Bowl, has basically all the passing numbers you could want, but his team suffers. The rest of his team suffers basically. So I really don't think. Yeah, you can like order them differently, but almost everyone knows those are the top quarterbacks in the NFL.
I think
Hey
it's.
man,
Oh, David, you're good.
oh, just real quick, and we can go into it later if it's better that way. But obviously, Ed did not agree with me putting Stroud down to the solid list, and so I'm just kind of curious to hear his counter argument. I mean, the evidence is there, Ed. He got worse in every major category.
Yeah, he got worse in every major category, but let me paint you a picture, shall I? Imagine going to a gym where CJ Stroud is just yoking presses up above his head for 3 hours straight. And then somebody comes, say, uh, let, let's let say Jake Paul. Say Jake Paul walks by with the glove and just punches him as hard as he can in the stomach. And then CJ Stroud drops the bar. You're going to get mad at CJ Stroud for dropping the bar because what happened to him last year was inexcusable by the offensive line. That was one of the most atrocious years of an offensive line I have ever seen. And relying on CJ Stroud to improve on one of the better rookie campaigns that we have seen in the NFL by a starting quarterback, by having his rib cage just pummeled for 4 months straight because that offensive line could not block to save his life or their lives. I I would not take him down from you can win a Super Bowl with him, especially when you know that he is going to have more help this year, uh, and blocking better this year, so he can actually see his receivers downfield and not only get the production that he had in his rookie season, but improve upon what it was 2 years ago, not look at what happened last year.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
that's yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of in the middle for me. I think I would put him. You could win a Super Bowl with him because when he's had the surrounding support, you've seen he's been an excellent quarterback. And like Ed said, like the point I would bring up is that offensive line. It was absolutely atrocious. However, counter to letter argument Ed's argument, I don't know if it's going to get better this year. Obviously, their defense is top tier. D'Amico Ryans has that unit as a top 5 unit. I think it's really, really good. But the offense, I don't think is going to improve because you just lost your best offensive lineman, sent him over to Washington, and you have to keep Nico Collins healthy. He's coming off his torn ACL, I believe. And I mean, you lost Stephon Diggs, but it wasn't like too much of a big loss. And Joe Mixon, he's kind of old. Like he had a good season with the Texans, but he is getting up there in age as their starting running back. So I don't know if it's going to get better, but they still made it to the AFC divisional round last year and lost in a war of attrition against the Chiefs. So it was still a pretty solid season despite him having a down year. I think you could probably still win a Super Bowl with him because you got to look at how quarterbacks handle late game situations. And I think he's still an excellent quarterback when it comes to that.
And he's still learning those late game situations too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's only in the second year,
y-
third year
absolutely. Yeah, no, third year. And that's why it's tough on a list like this because you could look at this from many different aspects and directions. As you could look at it, well, is this list mainly talent? Is it based off of talent or is it based off of the current surroundings that they have? Because I'm not gonna, I don't want to sound like a hater here, as you know, I'm a Steelers fan, but it's kind of ironic to me that you have can with a Super Bowl, and then above them you have franchise quarterbacks, and I don't know if Joe Burrow will ever win a Super Bowl until they could actually, have a defense, and I know they've tried to build on this offensive line to protect him, but who knows if he'll ever win a Super Bowl? He's got all the talent in the world, and I love Joe Burrow as a quarterback. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback, and he's got two animals at wide receiver with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. But if they don't ever fix that defense, it's going to be tough for them to win a Super Bowl. And you had talked about that offensive line with Houston. The year they did go to the Super Bowl, it was either the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game. Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times? You had to have known right then and there this is not a team that's going to win a Super Bowl if they let their quarterback get sacked 9 times. And yes, they've built that offensive line, but uh, it's just not pretty.
now.
Thaddeus?
I remember it was the divisional round against the number 1 seeded Titans.
Yeah, embarrassing,
Really weird.
embarrassing. So, but yeah, it's CJ Stroud is, I think, has the tools. He does, and that's why it's tough to really look at this list and how it was created because how are they basing it off of pure talent or their actual full team surrounding them? Because Jaden Daniels, as we know, phenomenal talent, but is Washington going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon?
One guy that I think probably, well, a couple of them at least, but definitely one guy in mind that I think probably belongs in a tier of his own is Jalen Hurts. The guy who just won a Super Bowl and also won Super Bowl MVP, right? To me, I think he's clearly better than just merely you can win a Super Bowl with him. But like, what category does he belong in? Like, does he belong in franchise QB? Because I think when people think of franchise QB, I think they think of someone who could be a quarterback for any franchise, right? Well, the Eagles are a franchise, obviously, and so in that case, is Jalen Hurts a franchise QB? Because I think he is obviously the perfect QB for that specific system. I don't know if he would work well in any other system, but again, like where would you have Jalen Hurts? Because I think he just belongs in a category of his own.
Ed?
I'm yes, he just won the Super Bowl, but your point is exactly right. He is the perfect fit for that system. He is a big, strong, big, squatty, uh, running quarterback. Uh, Not necessarily running, but somebody that has put this one play into play that is unstoppable for 2 yards at a time. And we all know we're talking about the tush push. Well, I don't necessarily think that without that team, he would even be in that can win a Super Bowl category. I think he may slide down. He's he's a decent enough passer. He's a decent, uh, strong guy standing back there. He's a decent runner. He's not. I don't think he's particularly great at any one thing. He's not a Joe Burrow that is really great, just dotting the ball all over the field. He's not as got the dexterity of Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have the strength, in my mind, of Josh Allen, and he doesn't have the speed um,
Lamar Jackson.
of Lamar Jackson. So I I don't see him being as that can win a Super Bowl with if it wasn't for the rest of that Eagles roster.
I mean, you could even compare it, to the Alabama national championship game. He struggled, and who ended up winning that national championship for them? I'm not Tua. This isn't to sound like a hater on Jalen Hurts because clearly we haven't even talked about Tua's name on this list because he is not on any of those tiers. But uh, it fits. It fits where he is now with this franchise and how they play. But outside of it, who knows? Thaddeus?
Yeah, so Jalen Hurts is really weird because there's a lot of people who say he's a franchise guy or he's totally mid, and there's not really a lot of in discussion of like how he's in between that. And I actually thought of a really great comparison. He is the him and Lamar Jackson are opposites, and how this makes sense is Jalen Hurts is actually terrible in the regular season. Oh, like terrible, terrible, but he's not good. He's never thrown for 4,000 yards. Lamar Jackson is great in the regular season, always throwing 4,000 yards. He's always got 40 plus touchdowns running, rushing, and passing. But then we get to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, for some reason, crumbles under pressure every year. But Jalen Hurts like excels. Like one of his best games ever was his first Super Bowl. So it's kind of like a teeter totter. It's like you take do you take Lamar during the regular season or you take Jalen during the postseason. So it's really that, and I do think actually what you guys were saying it makes a lot of sense. There's a second now. Obviously, Mike Mayock's tiers are a little bit different than everyone's general quarterback tiers. But if you take that and put him into like the general quarterback tiers, because there's obviously tier one, we got our top four guys even though Lamar doesn't win in the playoffs, but he's just such a superior physical talent that you have to put him in there, even though he crumbles.
I
And oh yeah, what were you guys say, David?
Finish your point.
And then you have your second tier, which is actually probably like what Nick Wright and the people on First Things First have said. The second tier is guys 5 through 15. You could order them pretty much however order you want, but it's just that second tier of guys who are good but just not great like the top four guys are, and you can order them anyway. And I think it's really interesting how that plays out, and you can put Hertz in that category. Like he's got some physical tools, not the greatest tools. He's good, not great, but he had like the perfect team around him last year, and they just blew almost through everyone. So it's really hard to gauge these quarterbacks as quarterbacks without involving the teams around them, except the top four guys, which is why they're considered, the rest of the guys are considered second tier.
So I hear what you're saying, Thaddeus, and I largely agree. But I do want to push back, and we're going to be talking about the Eagles toward the end, so hopefully I don't spoil too much. You talk about Jalen Hurts not throwing for 4,000 yards. Well, also keep in mind that's because the Eagles coaching staff is attempting way more rushes than passes for obvious reasons.
Oh, absolutely, they are, and we are definitely going to talk about that. And although this would be the perfect segue into that, I know we may have just a couple hot takes really quick before we jump to that. And David, I'm going to start with you on this list. Uh, we didn't talk about some of the quarterbacks in maybe the lower list, but I know that there is one in particular that you think actually belongs way lower than they are. And who would that be?
So Trevor Lawrence is in the solid but list. I would move him all the way down to jury's out. And why? Because Trevor Lawrence has gotten progressively worse throughout the years. His best season by far was his second year when he had 25 touchdown passes against just 8 interceptions. Since then, he has gotten progressively worse. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure his touchdown numbers have actually decreased throughout the years. Now, similar to CJ Stroud, you might argue, well, he hasn't had a good supporting cast, he hasn't had a good offensive line, and yeah, I get that. But Trevor Lawrence was also, uh, you know, uh, Trevor Lawrence was drafted as basically the second coming of Peyton Manning, of Tom Brady, or whatever quarterback you want to throw in there. He was brought in to be the savior of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm not saying that his team has helped him, but when you're brought in to be the franchise quarterback and you have all these expectations and you get worse throughout the years, like at some point that falls on you, so that's why I would have them all the way down to the jury's out category. What do you think, Ed?
As far as
Like,
Trevor Lawrence dropping or another take?
no, I meant like, do you agree with me that Trevor Lawrence should drop down? And again, my main reason being that he has gotten worse throughout the years,
He
progressively worse.
he's gotten he he has not progressed. I think he's one of those cases in which he has kind of leveled off as far as what his ceiling is, and the wide receivers that he had around him his first two seasons in the league are better than what he has to work with now. So that makes him look like he's getting worse when in essence he's actually just maintained because he doesn't have the receivers to take up the slack of where he is not great.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ed. It is tough because he has not shown any progression, and you know, just like everyone else, yeah, we are critics and we are all entitled to our own opinions, but until you show it on the field, we're only going to look at the numbers and what you are showing us, and unfortunately, you are showing us that you are not progressing. But maybe the jury's out, maybe it's not. We will see this season how things are going. I mean, he's got a promising receiver and Brian Thomas Jr., but who knows if he'll actually make it happen.
By the way, I do have one. I do have one more. I mentioned how there's a couple players that I would put in their own categories. Russell Wilson is another one. Put Russell Wilson in the times up category.
He'd be there maybe with Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, it's, yeah. Thaddeus, did you want to hone in on a point really quick?
Yeah, actually, about Trevor Lawrence, I agree with you. I actually think he's not even in the top 16. One of the top NFL YouTubers, Alex Rollins, recently did a video on him, how he can't read defenses, and he just struggles mightily. Like you said, like with that progression, he has not really progressed since he's got out of college, and he just struggles really struggles to read defenses post snap, and he's crumbling under pressure a lot. So, and we just haven't seen him. Obviously, people still want to keep him up as a top 10 because he was a number one pick. He was the best QB prospect since Andrew Luck. Well, expectations haven't gone out. My biggest thing is the Jags should have kept Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. They actually did better in his one season in Jacksonville than what Trevor Lawrence did in his second season. But I have a bit of a hot take for this QB list. So you have David moving Trevor Lawrence down. I'm going to move Geno Smith up. I actually believe that you could win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith. Now, obviously, it's been a bit of a weird transition because he was terrible in New York, and we all know New York does terrible jobs with quarterbacks. But his career resurgence has been really cool to see, and ever since he's done 3 seasons with the Seahawks, and in order for me to give someone like high praise, I'm putting this person on the top tier. You have to give me 3 good seasons, and that's actually what Geno Smith has done. His first year was obviously his best one, but his second and third seasons with Seattle have still been pretty solid, and he's a pocket passer, but he's still slightly mobile, can read defenses at an above average rate, and he still has a cannon for an arm. So, and I just really think being in Seattle, they didn't have a great defense. Their offensive line has not been good at all, like the past 10 years, I would say. They've never really had a good O line. They have good weapons, but he's not been exactly surrounded by the greatest talent. So I actually think you could probably win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith. I would put him in that second tier of quarterbacks. There's obviously a ceiling he has right now because he's 35, 36 years old right now. But that's what I think about putting Geno into that upper tier.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot take. He's going to be, with a new team, maybe the same program or type of system being ran, but we'll see how he does in Vegas. Really quick, you heard me talk earlier about defensive ends, edge rushers, and their worth, and I mentioned quarterbacks and their worth. The going rate is around $50 million a year. Well, let's talk about running backs. What is their worth? Is there a resurgence for the running back position, or was last year possibly an anomaly? You saw many new running backs in new homes. Derrick Henry in Baltimore, Saquon Barkley in Philly, uh, Aaron Jones in Minnesota. There are many running backs, and what did they have in common? They actually thrived. They did amazing. We've known Derrick Henry as an amazing rusher as his time in Tennessee, but Saquon Barkley dealt with injuries, didn't really do well when he was in New York, but once again, New York just struggles with almost everyone. Ed, let's start with you. Is the running back position back, and are they overvalued or undervalued right now?
As a whole, the running back position is undervalued, in my opinion. Now, the resurgence that we have seen with some of these running backs or the past year, even 2 years ago, we could call a couple of them, getting better. Uh, and keep in mind, Derrick Henry is battling father time at this point. He's getting into that Frank Gore category of running for 1,500 yards into his 30s. That's not normal at this point. But what I look at is the fact that offenses now in the NFL, especially the running game coordination of offenses in the NFL right now, better suit what the offensive lines are taught in college versus NFL style offensive line play because of all the zone reads, the way a handoff is done now versus what it was, even 5 years ago. Used to, you would turn around and meet the running back where he was going to be and hand the ball off. Now the running back has to go with that pseudo option, handoff look thing that they do now. which is more what these offensive linemen are taught how to play offensive line while they're in college. So then it becomes an easier transition when they see these same plays being played now in the NFL, which wasn't the case for probably 10 years. About 10 years ago, all of college went to this zone read spread offense, and it has taken this long to get a lot of those concepts moved into NFL offenses. So therefore, the offensive linemen coming out of college can block appropriately for the concepts that are being taught now. That in turn is allowing for more spacing, more gap soundness, and better technique for the running backs to be able to exploit the holes that are being made and create better running lanes than what they had over the previous 5 to 8 years. So, is it a resurgence of the running back? Maybe a little, but I think it's more of a resurgence of the offensive line actually blocking appropriately to match what the NFL is asking for now.
Yeah, oh, very true. David, do you want to kind of second on that or rebuttal on that?
Yeah, well, what I would say is keep in mind that the Eagles were the first rush first team to win the Super Bowl since the Seahawks, and that was 11 years ago. But keep this in mind as well. The best offensive player for the Eagles in the Super Bowl, it wasn't a running back. It was a quarterback. It was Jalen Hurts. And I just looked at their stats, and I might not get this exactly right, so forgive me. But I think I saw that Saquon Barkley had only 52 rushing yards on 2.3 yards per rush. And then meanwhile, Jalen Hurts averaged 10 yards per pass attempt and had a few touchdowns. So, you know, again, is the running back position back? Well, I think it kind of depends on what perspective you're looking at it from. Because, like I said, the Eagles were the first rush first team in over 10 years to win the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, the biggest game of the year, the best offensive player wasn't a running back; it was a quarterback. Thaddeus, what do you have to say to that?
It might be true. I mentioned it a couple times last year, but it really has to do with defensive philosophy, in my opinion, and it really shows in the stats. Now, like late 2010s, we had Patrick Mahomes lighting up the league. 48 throwing touchdowns, long bombs to Tyreek Hill. And you're like, well, where's that gone? And people always complain, NFL defenses have fallen off. It's more an offensive geared league. And while that might be true slightly with slight rule changes for the offense, the reason you're seeing the resurgence of the running back the last 2 seasons is because defenses have played more cover two. So they've not been allowing offenses to take the tops off them. They're playing everything in front of them. Almost all NFL defenses are doing that, which means now the league's adjusted, which means you get to run more. So now people have been feeding running backs a lot more. And with the Eagles, you had the best offensive line in the NFL paired with a top three running back in Saquon. And like, yeah, why not run the ball, basically, even though they threw it every once in a while. Jalen Hurts isn't bad. And they have top receivers in AJ Brown and Smith, but you just run the ball because they don't want to take you do not want to take the top off. Both Smith and Brown could take the tops off of defenses really easily. So it's a pick your poison kind of thing. And that's how the Eagles won. And as far as like other teams did, they're just like, yeah, well, I mean, you don't see a lot of deep threat teams anymore. The last one we have right now is the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill, and well, he had a bad season. So it's really just a switch in defensive philosophy that's allowed these running backs to have way more production the past couple of seasons compared to what we've had the previous five.
So, Matthew, I want to present the question back to you. Were the Eagles an anomaly, or have they set a new trend?
It's tough with hypotheticals. Uh, I would say that they set a trend, but it's not necessarily because of the tush push. I think that, like we said earlier with Jalen Hurts, I think that Saquon Barkley has found the right system. And because of that, I think that he's going to continue to really spread out and continue this play. Just because he may not have, been the guy who won them the Super Bowl, I still think that he is valued, and I think that he did show his worth this last year. But if you were to ask me this overall question of if the running back position is back or where they're valued at last year, before we knew anything about Saquon Barkley and how Derrick Henry were going to do, I was going to say that they were undervalued, and that was because of like Christian McCaffrey. I felt like Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, does so much on the field more than just a running back that he was almost like a field general being able to do many things at once. He could play receiver. And there are still a lot of running backs that are like that. Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, uh, they are becoming more well versed. But it's tough because I don't know if it's going to be an anomaly or not, but I just feel confident that in the Eagles and Saquon Barkley's sake, that they're going to continue this trend going into this year, and I think they're going to be a phenomenal running team. But only time will tell. Only this season will tell because uh, it's right around the corner, and we are expecting there are high expectations, especially from the Ravens with Derrick Henry, and of course Saquon Barkley with the Eagles, Aaron Jones in Minnesota. The list goes on because of what happened this last year. All eyes are going to be on the running back position. Before we go, really quick, there has been a tweak in the rules on kickoffs, and I think it's important for us to just briefly kind of go over that and talk about it. Thaddeus, what are you hearing and seeing on these new kickoff rules? Because it seems to be an every year occurrence that it is changing.
Yeah. So obviously last year we had the massive rule changes to the kickoff. So instead of running up, having the whole team run up, it's just the kicker, and both teams line up pretty close to each other, and they don't move until the receiver gets the ball. So the NFL, it appears, really liked that. And so now that is permanent because last year it was like a test, like a beta kickoff rules. And now they've made it permanent and they've added a couple, like two or three small rule changes to it. So the first one being kickoffs are now going to be at the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line. So what that means is, well, they're pushing for more returns. Last year, only about 30% of kickoffs were returned. They're hoping that number will jump up to 60 to 70% this year, and it might looks like it is because 35-yard line is 10 more yards, a whole first down more than what it was like just 5 years ago, okay, or a decade ago. And then the other rule change was
The
yeah.
onside.
Yeah, the onside kick, where it was kind of a stupid rule. I didn't like it at all. I'm guessing a lot of people didn't either. But the rule last year was you could only do an onside kick when you're down and in the fourth quarter. Now this year they said you can do it anytime, but you have to be down on the scoreboard. So I thank you, Ed, for that. But yeah, those are pretty much the new rule changes for the kickoff, which hopefully it'll make it more exciting this year. Also, and it sounds kind of counterintuitive that they want more kickoffs. Well, the whole reason they brought the whole new kickoff rules was for less concussions. Well, the data showed concussions went down, I think, 35 to 43% from the old kickoff rules. So it looks like it does help, but they're going to try to have more returns this year with these small rule changes.
Yeah, any quick thoughts on the new changes on the kickoffs, and is this one actually going to stick?
I have one thought and one thought only. Quit changing the kickoff rules every damn year because it feels like they change it every year.
I my thought on it is special teams coordinators need to learn how to run plays out of the kickoff formation. That that is something that I think needs to happen if there's if by what you say, Thaddeus, is the truth of lowered concussion, which is they want to have that be a priority of a safer game, then to make it more than just a 5 yard scrum that happens around the 30 to 35 yard line, then the special teams coordinators need to get with the offensive coordinators and learn how to run some what would be considered an offensive play out of the kickoff formation.
Yeah, it's always hard to kind of keep up to date with it because it just keeps changing. But I know that they are looking at trying to tackle two major things: player safety, but also engagement. So they're hoping to get that with these new rules. We'll see how it happens and if the competitive edge continues to come out on from the players. So before we get going, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to you guys, David, Ed, and Thaddeus, for sticking around, being here, and giving your amazing sports thoughts and opinions. And I want to thank you guys as the fans for being here, showing up, and just supporting us. It means a lot to all four of us. I think I speak for all of us when I say that. But thank you guys, and we're going to continue to keep doing great things for you guys. But until next time, guys, remember to always keep that head on a swivel.